Thank you all for coming. We're going to call to order the meeting of the Nagog Hill Orchard Working Group for May 10th, 2024. We do have one of our work group members is on Zoom, so we've got to do a roll call. So Matthew, are you here?
I'm here.
All right, Brad, I'm here.
Amy Charlo Lewis here.
Jen Clancy here.
Karen, you there?
I'm here.
So I think we're waiting on Will. I'm sure he'll be here, but he's running a little bit late. First order of business is approval of the minutes, and there's a typo in the minutes. I apologize. For March 27th, 2024. Any discussion of the meetings from the minutes of March 27th, 2024?
Yeah, and I didn't know if it was, I hadn't remembered if it was just a typo. So where it says Karen Morrison updated the group on the contractor to assist with the drafting. It says at this time there is still progress, or there is no progress.
There is progress.
Oh, there is
progress.
Yeah,
there is progress. I'm going to take still out because that doesn't make sense. But yeah, she told us that she was talking with town administrator about hiring Ray.
Okay.
I believe that's what you said, Karen.
Sounds about right.
That's all I had.
Any other discussion?
No minutes.
I'll entertain a motion to approve in a second.
I'll second it.
We'll just reverse the order. You can move. Okay, again, we need a roll call vote. Matthew?
Aye.
I'll abstain since I wasn't here and don't know what the hell you guys talked about. Amy?
Aye.
Jen Clancy, aye.
And Karen?
Karen Morrison, aye.
Motion, minutes passed. All right, the next one's a little bit uncomfortable. Sorry, a lot of it's my fault, and I apologize. So as many of you know, on Friday, we had an emergency meeting to approve warrant language to basically talk about selling them, get permission to sell the orchard. I got to say, I was a little bit taken aback on this at this meeting because I had thought we had previously had an agreement that the ultimate sale was going to go to town meeting. That was a misconception on my part. I apologize. It was discussed thoroughly, and I had discussed it with the town administrator, but that was not the case. We did vote that warrant language through, and even though I've got a concern with that, that was the right thing to do. A lot of this happened. Nobody's at fault here, probably me more than anybody, if anybody. There's no intention to run this by, but we were under the gun to get that warrant article passed. So we had it Friday afternoon. It had to be printed Monday morning. So due to some of the expediency, I think normally we would have had more discussion about how that was done, where it got put into those meetings. Where I stand on that is I'm somewhat uncomfortable with the selectmen making the final vote on who gets the orchard for a couple reasons. Personally, I've been through this many times before, and I've seen the selectmen, quite frankly, well-meaning perhaps, but make a lot of bad decisions with the orchard. It's why we are where we with it now. When we bought the orchard pretty much the same week I moved to Littleton. It was a nice orchard, well-run, pretty well-maintained, needed some investment, and today it's an embarrassment. And I think we need to try a different model than we've been using for the past 25 years. What I've also seen is coming into this meeting, I came in with a pretty strong opinion that we needed to sell the orchard given its condition. There was a lot of opposition to that. I've seen a lot of folks either come around or at least recognize that we're not being off the wall and doing this for no reason, that there's a rationale behind that. And part of my concern is that we're going to lose trust with the folks in the community if we propose this. So I spoke to, my colleagues on not at the same time, we didn't violate any open meeting rules, but I spoke to several of my colleagues here on the committee, spoke to some folks in the audience, Vin, who's some probably will disagree, but sort of a loose coordinator of some of the neighbors, and basically said, come and tell us your feelings. If I'm in a minority of people who doesn't care and thinks it's fine for the select board to make the final approval, I'm happy to shut up and move on. But if I'm not, for the reasons I stated, personally, I think it should. And if there's enough people here, I think we need to discuss an alternative mode of finalizing this sale. Now, I will say that, on the surface, if this was just any old piece of property, any surplus property, what's it called, Jen? Disposition of municipal surplus property, fine, select board can do it. I don't think anybody cares. But given the history and frankly, the missteps and the justifiable questioning of the townspeople, I think we might want to, personally, I think we need another method. So I think what I'd like to do is kind of leave it open to folks in the audience, and then we can discuss it and see where we want to go from there. I will say, I don't think everybody up here has been acting in good faith. They've been donating a lot of their time. So whether you disagree with them or not, this is not a time for righteous indignation or anger, but we just really just want to hear what you think about this. So, Vin, why don't we start with you?
Sure, just speak from here, okay?
Yep,
Okay.
and
Yes,
name,
give us
please
an address.
say your name and address and all that crap, so.
Vince Stolo, 3 Sarah Doublet. I want to start off by saying that I appreciate all the hard work that I've seen the Orchard Working Group go through over the past year or so that I've been following this. When I came into this process, I was in the over my dead body camp in terms of selling the Orchard property. I felt very strongly that way, and the work that the Orchard Working Group has done and has grudgingly made me realize that if we're going to keep this parcel as one of the jewels of the town that it really is, it unfortunately likely needs to be sold versus leased, given the issues that are facing the property itself, and the amount of work that needs to be done to it. I do run a small neighborhood email distribution list that follows the progress of the working group, and for months now, we've been working under the assumption that this was going to be sort of a two-step process. That step one, at the May meeting, folks were going to have the opportunity to vote to authorize the town to go out and send out RFPs to the interested parties to vet the people, to make some decisions on who would be the best fit, both from a cultural standpoint and a farming standpoint and a benefit to Littleton standpoint. And then once that piece was in place, my understanding always was that in November, supposedly, that we'd come back and the town would be given the ability to thumbs up or thumbs down to this entity coming in and buying the property. When that changed, when I found out that changed, I was traveling when you had the meeting in March where the decision was actually made. When I found out about it in the Zoom meeting on Friday, I sent out information to the email list that I have, and I had near unanimous response in that the people were up in arms. Like they just, I feel like they felt betrayed by, I'm not going to blame the working group, but I feel like they felt betrayed by the working group, that they were now going to kind of change things 11th hour and give the town carte blanche to make the decision as to who gets the land, how they're going to use it. And it raised all kinds of questions, some of which you articulated very well, Brad. And it made it seem like there was something going on, even though there was nothing. Like, I understand that, if a well-constructed RFP is put together, that that should resolve all the open questions and things of that nature. But the reality of the situation is, I think, given the property and the history of the property and the history of the select board not really having the oversight necessary on the property, the town needs a voice. We need to be able to make the final decision, and maybe the town makes the wrong decision, but the townspeople have the right to make the wrong decision. The two-step process allows for that. I have to say that from my own personal feeling, if it stays the way it is right now, not only am I voting no on the warrant, but I'm spending money to try to get other people to vote no as well. So that's kind of where I'm at. I mean, I have some thoughts on, you know, the RFP process itself, but I think that there's time to address that. Things like, you know, should the purchaser want to sell the property, you know, 5-10 years down the road, I think there should be, like, for instance, a right of first refusal that the town needs to make.
So just to stay on that, so we have when's our public meeting coming up at the library?
April 25th.
So April 25th, we're gonna have a meeting just devoted to hearing input, like, should we put a right of first refusal on it? So let's focus on that.
So
I will say my vision of this, and apparently it was not shared when I thought it was that we go through the RFP process, pick somebody and ask that person to make a presentation to the community before it goes to town meeting. And I've seen, and you folks haven't, most of the select board, I've seen the people, the applicants. We've got nonprofits that help feed people. We have nonprofits that help, you know, train other farmers. We've got young families who really want their own farm. There's at least 3 applicants I'm aware of that I think the town's gonna fall in love with, but I think they need personally, I think they need the opportunity to do that.
right.
But that's yeah.
kind of what I'm saying. So,
And I just
sorry, go
wanted to clarify something. So sometimes language matters. So this is what I sort of observed on Facebook, is that I think we just need to clarify when we're talking. When people say a 2-step process, in my mind, I think that's the request for interest and then the request for proposal. And then there's voting or having a say. And I think we should use language of May town meeting and fall town meeting, because I think the RFP and the RFI as 2 processes and spring and town meeting is getting very convoluted. So I think we just really need to be clear. Process is about RFI and RFP.
Yeah.
Having a say in voting is spring and fall town meeting. I think there's a lot of confusion in there as well, because when I think 2-step process, I'm like, we're doing a 2-step process.
So
Everyone's been attending.
if I may, the RFI process is over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? So in my mind, the 2-step process is RFP and approval.
So I think we can all agree that what the topic for discussion at present is whether we bring the final sale to the fall town meeting.
Right.
Okay. Anybody else would like to speak to this? Yes, ma'am.
Melissa Crowe, 52 Nagog Hill Road. I'm across from the orchard. I'm the closest person to the orchard. I have a big interest in what goes on there. And I agree with you and with Ben. And over my dead body is the town not going to get a vote. I will sit in the field and buy a big mean dog if I have to. The one thing I would say is that if it comes to a town vote, and I feel really strongly about this, I don't want to see the dog that everybody has selected and we vote yes or no on that person. If we do get more than one proposal, and we get those 3 people who we're all going to fall in love with, 3 different kinds of things, I think we should have the option, the town should have the option of a little bit of pick and choose. Or
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to allow town council some time to respond to the feasibility of that suggestion once
I'm
the
actually going
speaker's
to narrow it a
finished.
little bit more. I think that those details can be worked out later. I think really
I'm sorry, I think
focus
it's really important. I think it's really important that everyone understands what can be voted on and what can't. And so I'd really like that made clear.
Okay, Jenny, is it possible to come back with multiple applicants at town meeting that the town meeting could approve?
So I think that's actually difficult to do. I think what you can do with this town meeting vote is you can put brackets on the type of applicants you're going to seek. You can put input into how the process is going to work. But step 1 in actually disposing of the property is to get authority to do that.
No, we all agree with that. And that's what,
And so if you have authority to do that, subject to the town again saying you have authority to do that, do you really have authority to do that?
yes.
No,
So what state agency is going to say that you can't bring this to the townspeople? Seriously.
Well, I mean, it would be the Inspector General's office if somebody.
So do you
challenged
really think the
process.
Inspector General's office is going to give us a hard time because we decide we want to bring this ultimate decision to the voters?
No, you're saying, why are we voting on it in the spring if we're going to come back and vote it on it again in the fall, I think.
Well, I'm saying that, but also starting the RFP process, the kickoff to the RFP process is the town saying, we have property that's available for disposition.
Right.
Which, you don't have yet because the town hasn't said. It's still
Right.
disposition.
So we definitely need the step where the town votes to dispose of surplus property, I think is technically what it's called. The question is, can we come back and have the town vote on the ultimate sale? Whether it be one individual or a group that they choose from. And I think that's what Karen's asking.
Yeah.
One second, Mark.
And I
So-
think Jenny's raising an even earlier question, which is that if the town vote in May, is that there will be a second vote in November, is that vote in May even enforceable or legitimate from the Inspector General's opinion? Because it's saying it's doing one thing, but it's not really doing it.
Well, no, you can
Is that
say that
right?
we authorize
Brad,
the
I'm sorry,
town
I'm waiting for Jenny's answer here.
But yeah, my point is that it's conditional. You can sell this if we let you in the fall.
Okay, so I'm calling BS on this, because quite honestly, I don't think any state agency anywhere, if we come out with a Springtown warrant that says town has a right to put this out to RFP with the ultimate sale being approved at town meeting, I don't think any Inspector General in any state of the country, maybe Florida, right, is gonna argue with the town's ability to let the citizens decide. So, Mark, you had your hand
Can
up.
I finish what I
Yeah.
was saying? I was interrupted.
Sure.
I understand that we need to give the town permission to sell the property. That's one thing. Yes, you can sell it. But saying you can sell it, but we get final right of acceptance. Because there's a big difference between having a cow farm across the street from me and having a hayfield. You know, there's a big difference. And I'm sure there's a big difference to the entire town for that. So, I don't care how it's done, but it has to be done, is my point.
Okay. Mark, you had it.
So we went through this with the MBTA communities. We can't come to town meeting with two alternatives and allow the town meeting to pick. You just can't do it.
Okay, I'm calling BS again, Mark.
You can't do it. You
Sure you
can't
can.
write the warrant articles that way, right? It's outside of the scope of the way the warrant article.
You write a warrant article that says we give the town authority to go out to RFP for a sale of this, conditional upon final approval of town meeting.
That's not what I said. I said you can't say we can either do the horse farm or the hay farm.
No, no,
Town meeting, you
no.
cannot do
No,
that.
we haven't been through the RFP. We don't know what that will be. And ma'am, at this point, I think we need to focus on, is there a final approval of the sale? I don't think we're prepared tonight to talk about whether you can bring 4 applicants in front of you. I think that's going to be very difficult, to be honest.
Mr. Chairman, I have to really strenuously disagree with not taking into account, if we're debating whether a second vote is warranted, we need to understand whether a second vote will look the way that people are assuming it will. And I don't think that it is going to be an option where we say, town, we think, candidate number 1 is the best candidate. What say you? And they say nay. And then we get to move on to what do you think about candidate 2? I don't think we're allowed to do that. And that's why I'm asking for some clarification, because if folks are going to think that, if folks are going to say that, we've got to come back in November based on that assumption, then, there's no point.
So can the selectmen say no? Under your proposal?
To what?
Say number one.
If we come back with an
Say no to
RFP
what?
and we saw XYZ farm wants to take this over, I'm assuming the selectmen can say no.
Yeah,
Yes.
of course.
So why can't the town say no?
They can, but Karen is saying, if the town says no to choice A, we can't then move on to choice B.
That I agree with.
Okay.
And that's why I'm
but-
trying to
but-
focus on, at this point, man, with all due respect, I think we need to deal with that after.
I'd like to,
You get 2 minutes.
okay. Why is it just the town meeting A and the town meeting B? Because the decision is made between those 2 points, is what you're saying. When the RFPs come in, at what point is it going to be reviewed by a group of people? Why can't we just convene interested people, neighbors, abutters, whoever, to come to that meeting and be part of that discussion and given
Okay.
opportunity?
So I think there is opportunity to have some input during the process, but I don't think the input on choosing between A, B, or C can happen at town meeting.
Well, but then not at town meeting, but before that.
Yes, before
So
town
then
meeting.
before
So for
this is
instance,
town-
if we go out with an RFP and we've got 3 applicants and we haven't decided on this, and we have 3 applicants that we think are good. I don't see a problem personally, Jenny may tell me otherwise, of bringing them in and say, can you make a brief presentation on the town and what you're planning? And then we take input, and then we consider that in our recommendations to town meeting. Everybody's had a chance to hear them. They can bring their perceptions to town meeting and vote as they see fit.
That's better.
Would that be a problem, Jenny?
Well, removing the subsequent town meeting issue.
Yes.
Having all that public input into your RFP, into responses, into interviews, absolutely fine.
Okay.
It's a policy decision, how you want to conduct that process. As part of this town meeting vote, the article is formed, so we have got 4 corners of this article. But within the 4 corners of that article, if you wish, you can alter the motion to include things, constraints on what you're going to do, if that's what you'd like to do. If you'd like to say, nope, no cow farmers, you can put that in there. It's available for disposition for an RFP that will keep the APR in place. The select board has authority to expand the APR or put a new agricultural restriction on it. The select board has the authority to put a historical restriction on it, or any other restriction that it sees fit, as far as that would serve the purposes of selling this property. And you can add more to it. You could say, and we would like you to sell it to somebody who has this type of agricultural use, or we would like to.
So we're not looking
tell you to sell
put that on.
Hold on.
a nonprofit, or first of all, it's going to be subject to the state's process. Your selection of a farmer has to pass their test in order for them to not exercise their right of first refusal.
Right, we understand that.
So that already puts a layer of sort of rigorous requirements into your RFP, because you're going to want to make sure that your respondents can meet their standard, unless you just want to say state.
No, I rewrote the APR law. I'm aware of what it is.
Oh,
Everybody here is, so.
So that's just a way to, to say, if it's, it's up to you guys, those are permissive things to do in your motion right now that would put some restraints on exactly what the RFP process would look like.
Right.
Then once the RFP process starts, it could be, the select board could say, okay, working group, I want you to run with this and make a recommendation to us. And the working group could say, all right, we would like all of our meetings to be open to the public. We want all the interviews to happen in the public. We want to hear from the public. That's completely fine. You can do all of that before you make your decision.
Yeah, I think we're all aware of that.
Yeah, so I don't have an issue with people bringing their suggestions. That's why we're having the meeting and later in April. But the concern is, if everyone says, well, we don't want this, and we don't want this, and we don't want this, then there's no farmer out there that exists. If you make, say, this huge list of no's, you're not going to end up with a farmer. It is a farmer's job to identify their farm business that they feel will be successful on that property. Farmers know what they're doing. They're entrepreneurial, they're smart people. And this type of regulation is going to leave you with nobody. The farmer that you dream of doesn't exist. And no one is going to change their farm business that is defined by people who aren't farmers. A lot of the applicants want to have some type of animals there.
Right.
And that farm used to have dairy cows. Farms change, they evolve.
I think we're getting off track.
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say that, that is a legitimate concern. But apart from the legality of having this subject to 2 town meeting votes, you're also going to have a harder time getting people to respond if they think that their chance of getting it is still subject to yet another vote.
That is a downside, I agree. But I think, what I don't think folks are necessarily in town hall and who haven't been part of this are really identifying, this isn't a simple disposition of state property issue. This is a public relations issue, and it's been festering for 25 years. And I think we're going to lose support for the sale and everything else we worked here if we don't find a way to give the townspeople the final say. So I, for one, am not looking in the RFP to limit it to non-dairy farmers or not hay at this point. We can take that input at the upcoming meeting, and we can consider it in our view of the RFPs and our recommendations. The real question, I think, before us is, can we have the ultimate approval go to town meeting? Now, I have some concerns about that. I hate town meeting. As town gadflies, I really don't want to listen to for half the night, that we all do. But I think at this point, it's necessary. And yes, there are downsides of it. We could have, but at this point, quite frankly, I'd rather trust 500 or 600 people in the town to make this decision than the 5 people on the select board. Nothing against the current select board, but every single one of them has been failing for 25 years to make the right decision.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Can we legally alter this to allow for a town meeting vote for the approval of the final sale?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to remind you about the rules of decorum. I take offense to that statement. I have not been on the select board for the last 25 years. Every single member of the select board has not been on the select board for 25 years, failing this town.
Well, I'll make note of your offense, and I've been offended for 25 years by every single select board that's come through here on this issue. So my bigger point here is I think the town's at the point where they want to decide, and that's what we're trying to get in here. So Jenny, again, the question, can we write this warrant article that will give town meeting the final vote? Just a simple final vote.
I think it's questionable. I don't think a town meeting vote that says the select board is authorized to sell this property after we say it's okay in November is actually a vote to authorize.
Can you explain that a little more clearly and a little louder, please?
Absolutely. So chapter 30B, which is what they're required to comply with. Well, it's one of several laws that they're required to comply with to sell this particular piece of property, but any property in general. You have to comply with chapter 30B before you dispose of town property. So the first step is that the select board, when duly authorized, makes the property available for disposition. And that might happen in a variety of ways. They might be authorized by statute to do that. They might not have to come to town meeting at all. In this case, they do. They have to come to town meeting and ask town meeting, can we sell the orchard?
The spring town meeting, correct?
They have to come to town meeting before they can offer it for sale.
Okay, and that will probably be the spring meeting?
It's on the warrant.
It's
That's the way it's written on the
That's the way
warrant
it's
now,
written on the
yeah.
warrant now.
Okay.
So that's what they're doing, and that's step one before the RFP goes out.
Mhm.
Otherwise, we're gonna look at another RFI, which we've already had one. Because we can't legitimately say, we're selling you this property, because town hasn't really authorized it. They've authorized it.
So somebody comes in and say, we're going to buy the property subject to financing being approved. Every sale that goes through, you sign a purchase and sale subject to financing. And I've sold buildings when people came through and said, I couldn't get the loan. Sorry.
But that's not 30B.
Let me finish, Matthew.
Okay.
Okay. I will note that it's both the select board members who are the most opposed to this, if you want to be offended, Karen. So let me finish. I don't see why we couldn't write it in there that said, okay, it's subject to you getting, financing, and it's subject to us getting a final approval at town meeting. And I understand 30B is there, and I will go back to you again. Do you ever think the Inspector General will call up the town for bringing this ultimate vote of a very contentious and emotional issue back to the townspeople for a vote? Sorry, go ahead now.
Well, I was going to say that financing is different from getting a legal approval under a statute to sell a property. Like financing is contingent upon a contract between two people. It's not a municipality and a seller, and it's not a municipality trying to sell something under 30B. So that's not a valid.
I disagree.
Okay, you can disagree all you want, but it's not valid. Secondly, I think that you have been slagging the select board tonight, and I'm on the fence about. I actually thought we were going to go back to town meeting and get permission. And my opinion is that, yes, the select board has done a terrible job of being a landlord, but there's a big difference between running a property and evaluating, people who respond to an RFP and deciding on whether or not they are appropriate, especially because all of those applicants are going to be extremely constrained by the input that we get from all of the residents and the legal guidelines that we have put in place for the RFP. We are not going to be able to present it to someone who wants to turn it into a pig farm. I know we're not, because we're going to write that out of the RFP. So I'm not sure what the huge objection to the select board deciding when they can evaluate all of the applicants. What your objection to it is not the same as the objection that you have to the select board not managing the property accurately, which is a valid objection.
Well,
So,
I will tell you, having been on several of these, and actually like the current select board more than I have any since I moved to the town. But quite frankly, I've been burned before by the select board. And I've seen over and over again, people go to the input with the select board and not necessarily the current people, but it's been enough that I'm not willing to extend to you the
fair enough.
supposition that you will, and again, nothing against anybody, well, a couple, but none of the people here anyway, right? Who I don't think anybody here, and I said it before, and this goes for you, Karen, Mark, I don't think anybody here is acting out of bad faith. But I've seen input ignored on the orchard before from the select board, multiple select boards. I don't have reason to believe that you wouldn't do it, but I've been burned enough that frankly, personally, I'm not willing to buy it. On top of which, I think at this point, and you can say, oh, we're selling it now. That's a bigger decision than who's gonna manage it.
But it's a different kind of decision than managing it. Like, when we're evaluating the state of it and deciding whether or not to renew a lease, like, that's very different from looking at someone's bona fides for running an orchard, in my opinion.
Well, hopefully you'd be looking at
think-
the same thing when you did the lease, but my point is, it's even a bigger decision because the time, you lease it, you get 5 years, however long the lease is, and you get a bad person in there for 5 years. We sell it, it's gone.
So I
So-
think it would be helpful if we understood what the role of the evaluation committee would be in the RFP process.
So let's back up a minute, Karen, because we did invite a bunch of people here and we all get caught up, and I would like to give some of the folks in the audience a chance to speak and hear their thoughts. Maybe it's just me, Vin, and Don, in which case we can move on. So gentlemen in the back.
Yeah, I'm Tom Lunan.
I mean,
live on
why-
Neshoba Road, right next to Charter Way going up to the forest and stuff. So I'm right across from the orchard and been there about 20 years. And I appreciate, like Vin said, and I do appreciate all the work that you guys have put into this whole process. And I would have been frustrated if I were you doing it, but thank you very much. And I appreciate where we're at. What I would like as a town citizen is, assuming you have a couple of candidates, first of all, is it the highest price? And you're gonna say, well, the select board's taking the highest price. I don't care if they're raised pigs or whatever. I grew up on a farm, by the way, so I know what a farm is like. I don't care if they're raised pigs or whatever, they're the highest bid, they're getting it. What I would like as a citizen of the town, if you have a couple of candidates, to have input on which one I would prefer. That's what I would like, to be part of the town. And it's not my decision, but at least I can let you know, and the city know, and the town know, this is what this citizen would like and prefer. Now, if they do something different, I guess that's their choice, because I'm not on the board and I don't make those decisions. But I would like to have input as a citizen on which candidate, if there is more than one.
So I think we can work that out. Like, the question would be, and again, I'm open on this. If I'm in the minority, I'm happy to let it go. If you have that input, would you be comfortable in letting and have the opportunity to present that input? Would you be comfortable with the select board making the final
I
decision?
don't know if I have a choice. What's the choice if the select board doesn't make a decision?
Well, then,
Well, what we're arguing is the potential to bring that final sale back to town meeting. That's what many of us thought, and again, mistakenly on my part, and what some people are looking for now. We can, there's question about whether it's legal. It may be unorthodox. I would question the illegality of it, but so based on what you said, yes, we can provide input, and I think we will probably do that anyhow, and we get it in there. Would, after you have that input and the ability to present it to people, to select board, us, whoever, do you feel comfortable with the select board making that decision?
Or the other option would be a vote. Is that right or not?
I mean, theoretically, yes.
Right now, we're theoretically at least talking about leaving it to a town meeting.
Obviously, I'd prefer a vote if we could do that,
Okay.
but if we can't, because I don't know the politics and the procedures.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Yes, sir.
Is John Mitchell, and I live on Beaverbrook Road. And, since the demise of the Littleton Independent, those of us who live here and don't, attention to the notices up here, we don't know what's going on. And can you back up for the sake of the uninformed and tell us the backstory of this? My understanding is in on the fight to save that land, save the orchard and save the shared public forest. And well, maybe you could just back up. This is going to.
How far do you want to back up, John?
To the idea that it's going to be sold to a private individual.
So where we came in, as you know, we had Charlie Auger in there, and I think Charlie Auger did a good job maintaining it, but
Yeah.
it wasn't set up where he was going to invest in it, which you need in an orchard. It slowly deteriorated. Then there was a decision to let his son take it over after it sat fallow.
Right.
And there's several work groups in between that frankly were ignored by the select board at the time. It went fallow there. They put out at least one RFR. We had a respondent. It really didn't line up. And we came back and this work group looked at it, took input from a lot of people. And what we determined, frankly, was, and there's a lot of reasons for this, our determination was, given that, one, the town had done a poor job managing the lease before, the fact that it would be rented land that literally had millions of dollars that needed to be invested in it, we'd have trouble finding anybody with enough business sense to be willing to pay that money on rented land, because the orchard needs a lot of work, the buildings. It was decided that really the sale, given the history, the weight of evidence, and then we went up with an RFI and got input from people for either sale or a lease. And by far the most qualified people, in our opinion, were the folks who wanted to buy it. And so the weight of evidence, and other people jump in if I'm misspeaking, in my opinion, the weight of evidence favored a sale of the orchard rather than a lease of the orchard.
So that means that it'll be private land.
Yes,
But it
but it will
will
still be protected under APR, as you know, John.
Okay.
And we're actually adding the barn to the APR, and that parcel in the barn, which is on excluded envelope. And we've got verbal agreement from DAR to do that. They won't take the house, but we are looking at potentially doing a historic restriction on that.
Has it ever come up that this is actually Native American land? This is included in the.
Yeah, and we had the Praying Indians, the Neshoba tribe. I apologize if I don't have the name right. They put in a proposal. They're welcome on the RFI. They're welcome to put one on the RFP. But as you know, Jenny suggested, Department of Agricultural Resources holds the restriction on this land. There's a contract that goes with it that allows them to come in, and if we come up with somebody who's not qualified, they can come in and exercise their option to put somebody else on the land, and they've done that several times in the past. So we need to find somebody who's qualified. I think it's in everybody's interest to do that. Native Americans would be great if they can do that. I have no problem with that.
Let me ask you another question. What if you do nothing?
We
In
can't.
other words, let the,
So if we do nothing, that land will grow up into forest.
right?
That will be a violation of the APR. It will be up to the Department of Agricultural Resources and the Attorney General whether they want to pursue that. I do know of a property on the Cape where the gentleman let it go into, neglected it for years. I think his idea was at some point they'd give up on it. He could make it into a golf course. They didn't do that. The Attorney General sued him. So we do have a legal obligation to keep this in agriculture.
Yeah, okay, I guess I get it. I'm just wondering, because this was native land and they did practice agriculture, and there are even evidence of their.
And we have an RFP out there. If any tribe, anybody can come in and basically make a proposal. But at this point, we also have to weigh a lot of things. The legalities of the APR, the best interests of the town, but the main thing is legalities of the APR and keeping it in productive agriculture. Okay.
I have a question for Jenny. So assuming that we go with this 2-vote process, like let's say we just do it, like damn the torpedoes, what's the risk?
So, I would.
I got one other question.
No, John, hold up, John, you're ahead of your time.
No, John,
What's an
excuse me.
Just hold off, John. We're in the middle of a conversation with somebody else. Sorry, Jenny, go ahead.
There would be risk of somebody who doesn't get selected, somebody else upset about the process in town, bringing this up with the Attorney General's office or the Inspector General's office and having some sort of unfavorable advice from them or decision from them, possibly them investigating. That I agree seems unlikely. I would also be concerned. We'd want to make sure that MDR is okay with the way we're proceeding because they have their own process. Their process doesn't kick off until you have basically a purchase and sale agreement, which will be conditioned on a right of first. Well, it'll be conditioned on a right of first refusal.
Right.
But on the note of what a PNS might be conditioned on financing MDR exercising their rights. That's a separate issue from this one discrete comply with 30B.
Could you make the right of first refusal the town vote in the fall?
The right of first refusal lies with,
Oh, them, not
With them,
with town.
that's their right, so-
got it.
No,
Yeah.
we,
Yeah, yeah,
that's, that is like 4 months
Yeah,
or plus after you execute a purchase.
And basically what happens, we sign a purchase and sales, it goes to MDR, they have a certain amount of time to decide, no, we've got somebody better. It doesn't even have to be the same price.
That will, yeah, sure.
So if we could, if you.
You
Yeah,
need
no,
to
we-
say your name and your
And we
address.
also need to let
Raise
every,
their
and we
hand.
also.
Yeah, you've already spoken, man. Let's let some other
I
folks
have a
speak, please.
question about
And we'll
this.
get to your question, we're gonna let some other folks speak first. Okay, Don?
Yeah, Don McIver, 43 Foster Street. And I agree with a lot of the comments you've made. I agree.
I have to say,
No,
Don, that
I
makes me a
know.
little bit frightened, but that's
I
okay.
don't see any malcontent at all, or whoever in this committee, they're working very hard. I agree also with the current board of selectmen. I think everyone has good intent. And also, I'm probably the only person in the public's read all the responses to the RFI. I think they're all genuine and truly interested. Maybe it makes sense if some join together to accommodate some areas that others are short on. Just to answer the quick question, I believe we need to go to town meeting for final approval. Now, let me step to a few other things. I look at what was done on the planning board with the commuter rail 3A zoning. And there's a lot of dissensions, a lot of going out to the public, listening at things, and was really done very well at the last meeting. There was consensus. Not everyone got their way, but they looked at what they could live with and looked what served the community. I think we need to do something like that. And as I indicated in some of my correspondence to people, I look at what Acton's doing. They also have a Morrison farm with a barn and a house, and the question is what to do with it. Slightly different, but they were going to go to town meeting, actually put more protection on it. We already have some protection, but they decided, no, let's step back, let's listen to the public. I think that's the right thing to do. I think to force us through for a warrant article this time is a misstep. And we may disagree. I've worked with you before changing conservation restrictions. I think it would be to our advantage to actually rescind and remove the vote you have.
So Don, my understanding is this warrant article, we need it to put out the RFP. We
Well-
need to vote to make it a disposition, a state.
And I think what I'm suggesting is maybe you go to the Inspector General, ask beyond whatever's codified in 30B, what are the conditions that would make it acceptable? And try to fit within it. At the same time, get public input on what conditions would be reasonable for someone taking over the land. And I don't mean exactly what someone's growing and stuff. I mean things like viability, long-term viability, not just short-term. Some of the things we were getting at previously, how do we have assurance is going to serve the community? And it's more than just agriculture. I know we have a mandate obligation for agriculture, but it's been mentioned at this meeting before, it's a special land, whereas, it's part of the praying Indian plantation, and that has come up. Actually, they grew apples way back when. So I think that is the most helpful thing, getting public input and finding out what are the characteristics you want to go for. Maybe that would go in the RFP. But we really focus.
That's what the upcoming meeting in the library is for in large part.
Right, but those things should happen. It's like, ready, aim, shoot. We start shot first and ready, aim. I mean, we need the public input before things. I know.
So the timing is that we need to get approval to put out the RFP, and it is, but we're getting the input to write that RFP. So there's a timing of town meeting done. That's why we're doing it now.
But
And we don't want to miss another season, and we could put this off indefinitely, but we've already missed every season we miss, that orchard falls into greater disrepair.
We want to get someone in there by 2020.
And in the meantime, people could do stuff to try to bring it back.
But we're still saying about that's another 6 or 7 month delay. If we don't start the process at
What
this
we
time.
could do is actually work well together and actually have something ready for the fall town meetings. All depends.
So I don't think the timing works in my opinion, Don. I've seen volunteers go up and prune the orchard. They were volunteers, they weren't professional pruners.
Oh, yeah.
I think, and this is part of my concern. If we just go to the town meeting and say, hey, we want to sell it, without, and this is part of my concern, without the assurance that we're gonna come back with the final sale, that's my concern. And this is what I expressed to Matthew and Karen initially was, look, if they don't, folks don't think they have I think we've convinced a lot of folks that a sale is a rational approach, if not the final one. But I'm not sure we've convinced them that we're gonna pick the right person, and the select board will pick the right person. So I think we need to move forward with the spring town meeting.
So when I look at this is, to use the simple agricultural term, buying a pig in a poke bag. We need to put everything in place. And I think if we work together, we will be your strongest supporters and we'll have a good solution, much like the planning board did with the 3A zoning. So more public input is needed. Put together characteristics, make sure there's long-term viability for what's there. Not, there are a lot of loose questions still about the barn and the house, and putting a historic designation on it is just as bad as doing a CR today. They're all backlogged.
Well, anyway, so we discussed this. I think we got your input on this. I think it's time to give somebody else a chance. 1 minute.
My concern is this will come out like the Cooper Farm, and that was a fiasco, and that should have been contested.
So
And town council should have been challenged.
it will not come out like.
It's not, it's a completely different situation.
The property's
If
already
you
protected.
delegate everything to the select.
No,
It is.
Don, that's a completely
Anyway,
different situation.
we heard your point. Mark, you were gonna say something.
So I would say that this town meeting vote is whether you lease the property or sell the property. Because there's no point in putting an RFP out that says we're gonna sell the property if we can't sell the property. And there's no point in waiting till, if it goes till November and it fails at town meeting, you just spent the past year and have made zero progress. You're back in exactly the same situation you are. We have no tenant in there for 25. We have to start everything over. So right now, the vote should be lease it or sell it. And then that's giving your group and the select board the charge on which way to write the RFP going forward. No one's going to make the decision in a back room with saying, oh, we're favoring this person versus this. These are all going to be public meetings. Everyone can come and state their piece, but the people that get to vote are either on the committee or on the select board, not, if this is decided by town, someone's gonna want a pig farm, or someone's gonna cow farm, or someone's gonna want the hayfield, and the thing's gonna fail in November because everyone's going to say, that's not the one that I would have preferred. We're gonna go to number 2.
And what I'm trying to get to, Mark,
back to exactly the same spot we are now.
Are we gonna fail in May if folks don't feel they have
So if we fail in May, then you write the lease, then you write the RFP as a lease, and we can still make progress.
Well, then you have to ask why it's failing in May for sale. Is it because people aren't comfortable with the sale, or are they uncomfortable with the oversight? So, and that's what I'd like to hear. Somebody who hasn't spoken before, does anybody want to speak to this issue? Yes, sir.
Mark Fryer, I'm at 75 Edsel Road, but my maid is at 60 Nagog. 2 questions I have basically. Is one, will the RFP become a public document?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I guess the second question is,
We'll post it on the website. You'll see it at the same time respondents do.
By definition, it's a public document. Because we're
perfect.
Now, the responses, if you want to see them, you have to file a public records request. Some people have financial data and things, but Don did it. You can do it. We don't recommend it because it scares some folks off, but it is your right.
Okay, so with that said, I don't need a second question because I wanted to see how how the RFP was written. Taking into consideration all these other people's input about what type of farm it's going to be and that sort of thing. I know there's people who disagree with me, but I feel that any farmer who's going to work it and keep it as an agricultural site, so be it. And the only other part of that is, will the town allow that new buyer to either lease or sell partials?
No, they can't, because it's under the APR law, they can't subdivide the APR.
So if
They could lease part of it, but they couldn't sell it.
okay, they could lease part of it. Because Mara and I have talked multiple times, even approaching the town about buying a big strip that goes across the street from her house.
Yeah, unfortunately, we can't subdivide the APR.
But we could potentially lease it from the new.
It would have to stay in agriculture.
Oh, it certainly would.
Okay, well, that's between you and whoever ends up with potentially the town if we don't sell it, but the buyer if they buy it. Yes, ma'am.
Questions again?
I'm at 60 Road, Warren Keeler. So if it gets sold, my concern lately is if it gets sold, then what's to say that person's not gonna sell it to whomever after that?
So they can, I mean, that's
They
part of
can,
the,
and then
one of the
nobody has-
downsides of this
Yeah, so I
is,
feel like lease is better because then at least we vet whoever it is and for as
Yeah,
long as
so
they're there. I'm not-
the downside of selling it is they can sell it, it would have to stay in agriculture, it's not gonna become a Amazon warehouse or house lots or something, it would have to stay in agriculture, but once we sell it, it's
It's gone.
private property with, it's not gone, it's there and it has to be a farm, but it's private property and they can sell it to another person with the same restrictions.
Yeah, and so what we've talked about, we can talk about it more later, is that we want to put a trigger clause in there, so if they want to sell it, the town gets the first right of refusal, so that the town has a chance to like catch it again.
But the town doesn't want it, obviously. They're trying to get it up their plate so that the town doesn't want it.
Well, if they
back.
wanna take
But
it,
addressing
and
the concerns of the community is to keep the property protected, so if there was a right of first refusal for the town to buy it from whoever was selling it,
Yeah.
that would guarantee the protection, which is a security that people are looking for.
And here's something I want to say, like, you know, I think a lot of this comes down to trust, and it's a completely valid concern. We have failed this property for 25 years. But the thing that I see is that this board and the select board is in really good faith, like, I think legitimately interested in trying to do right by the property. And that's the situation we're in this year. And in 3 years, there's a different board and we don't know what's going to happen. So whether it comes to a town vote or a select board vote, I think that the select board is gonna, and you are gonna have input on the RFP, and I think the select board is gonna review the respondents most likely, and we're gonna end up suggesting one, and either the select board will vote with the the advice of this board, or the select board and this board will bring one to town meeting for a vote. So in my opinion, the select board and this board together is a better option because I think that it will give the buyer more security because they will know that those boards have the right to sell it to them, and it could be definitely more expedient. And but I'm not going to die on that hill. If everyone here in this room says we absolutely have to go to vote at town meeting, okay, that's fine. Maybe we can find a way to do that. I think it's risky, but either way, I think we're going to do right by the property and by the residents. And especially because we're going to spend a lot of time and effort getting input from you. We're going to start on the 25th of this month, and we're definitely going to hear more about it from the RFP. You mentioned the MBTA zoning. It was really refreshing seeing that last meeting because finally they got to a place where it felt like the planning board was listening to what the residents said. And I think we're starting here from a point where these boards want to hear what you say. We're not being obstructive about it the way that frankly, some of those MBTA meetings have gone. So I'm optimistic that we can find a solution. I hope that we can find an effective and efficient solution to solve the problem and not frankly get mired into a debate on the floor of town meeting, which in my experience isn't always productive.
Yeah, and I just wanted to go back to the lease piece versus the purchase thing. So we've been, as we know, we started this back in 2020, and the first thing we did is we put it out for a lease, and we had an RFP, and nobody applied. And the reason why nobody applied is because the property's so big and it needs so much investment. No one wants to do that because they can't get a return on investment. They don't own it. It's not their asset, any of that. So then we put it out again, and we only got one response. So we did that twice. And then we did an RFI, and the majority of the people want to purchase it, not lease it. So the market data has told us, we didn't decide purchase. The market data, the farmers who are interested in coming to our community and being a part of our community told us they want to purchase it.
So
And
how
when
long
they
was the lease
purchase
for,
it,
if you don't
they're
mind?
going to make
30
the
years.
investments into it.
I'm sorry, how long was the lease for?
30 years.
We can do up to a 30-year lease.
And I think it's also important to note, if we lease it, the taxpayer is going to have to invest well over $1 million just to get that property up and running. And I'm going to guess $250,000, $500,000 every year for a very long time to support that farmer so that their farm business will be profitable and successful. Every day, farms go out of business. We lose farmland every day. This farmer needs to be successful. In order to be successful, they need to own that land. That is the difference between farms that fail and farms that thrive.
So the analogy I use is you don't build a house on rented land. And that's essentially what you'd be asking somebody to do, to invest that much money in those buildings and that property.
Yeah, I
So
understand that. I understand that. It just means once it's sold, and then none of us get any say about the next.
that's not completely
after
true.
that.
We still have the APR and that sort of thing, but we lose a lot of control, I would agree. Yes, ma'am, you had a question in the back.
Hi, Polly Davis, Pine Road. I just had a question about the lease and the length of time, but I also want to know what's the price that you're trying to sell it at?
We have not set a price or asked a price.
So we
We
did,
did do an appraisal. What was it, like 900,000?
Yes.
900,000 for the house, the barn, and the land with the restriction. That doesn't mean that's what we're gonna ask for. We won't take less or more. I mean, I think at least my priority in voting on this is gonna be, I want the best candidate who's gonna run that farm in the best interest of the town.
yeah, I mean,
I think
honestly,
it's-
like,
we need
they
to
don't have to put in that price, like, there's a price per acre. I assume everyone here's read the land best report before they came. There's a price per acre. You should read it. It's really informative. It's really gonna help you with the land best report, which is on.
So that was the appraisal we had done. It's on our webpage. It's posted.
So it gives estimated
Other
values,
people.
but no one has to like bid that amount. They could just be like, I want to pay $1. And they end up meeting all the criteria, then that's great. They pay us $1. Like,
So-
we want the right person. They can offer whatever they want.
Karen, go ahead.
Karen?
Yeah, I just think it's important too, regarding the land best appraisal, that appraisal is based on the barn and the house being unrestricted. And what the article does that is going to be presented in May is allow us to pursue restrictions that will keep the barn and the house together with the farmland, which I think everybody on the Orchard Working Group Committee has unified on the fact that they need to stay together to be a viable working farm. So, that $900,000 is a number that might not hold once we add additional restrictions on the property.
And from my perspective, price is one of the factors I'm gonna consider. If we get two absolutely equal people, I'm gonna go to the one who's gonna pay the town more money. But if they're not equal, I'm gonna start weighing things against, and money is not gonna rule the decision-making, I think, for any of us.
I didn't get to say one thing that I wanted to say, is that I would personally like to know who the candidates are, read their proposals, what are they intending, and then get to vote on it. I want to say in the matter.
Yeah, I think that might be a little bit too involved to have the whole town involved in.
That's the role
At the end of this,
of,
you may take my spot on the committee. Yes, ma'am. Did you have anything else you wanted to?
No, but I just find it very interesting when you say it's been 25 years left to rot. I mean, it has been a functional orchard. People have used it. It can be used. I mean, look what they did for the CSA, they tried over there. There's many groups, like you said, nonprofits. And I'd rather see a nonprofit come in and lease it and not sell it.
Okay. Well, Lisa's been difficult. Yes, ma'am.
Name and address.
Yeah,
Yep.
my name's Maya Applebaum. I'm 92 Foster Street, and I admit I'm new in this subject, so forgive me if I'm just asking you to rehash something. But I'm getting confused about whether the RFP has already gone out.
No, it has.
No.
Okay.
So we did a request for information, which is kind of a market thing. It says, okay, we're thinking of leasing or selling this property.
Yeah. I got
Send us
that
your
part.
proposal. So that's come in. So
Yeah,
we
I
have
got
that. The next step is we need to get the town, and as we said, the weight of evidence supported a sale versus a lease.
Right.
I know some people don't agree with that, but that's, so the next step is for us to go to town meeting and get permission to sell it and put it out to RFP.
Okay. So.
And the question then becomes, who gets the final approval over the sale, which is what the gist of this discussion is.
Thank you. That said, how much can, not just reviewing the applicants, but actually coming up with the way that RFP prescribes things, how much input can happen even in making the RFP, writing it?
We're beginning that process on Thursday, the 25th of April, with a public forum, and it won't be the last one. So we are actively looking for input from the residents
So
about it.
that's sort of what you've been getting at, and I think, does the decision have to be made now about whether the town will get to vote in the fall on the applicants? Or whether it's the selectmen who vote, or can that ride for a little
Well,
while?
as it stands now, the Springtown meeting warrant article gives the selectmen the authority to make the final
I
decision.
see. So that's what you're trying to get clarity on
Right,
tonight.
and are people comfortable with that or not?
And if they're not comfortable with that, what can you do given the way the warrant is
Well,
written?
I think we need to discuss that. There's some discussions about how that might take place. So we've heard, can I just get does anybody else?
I'm
Yep.
gonna add my voice to that I'm not comfortable with the select board making that
Okay.
decision. Okay.
Does anybody else who hasn't spoken have anything to say?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am, we'll get her and then we'll go to the online one. Sorry.
Hi, Christian Pacifica, 6 Cottage Way. I think that, and what I've been telling people is put your criteria in before the RFP is written, because to me, that seems like the key factor in what's happening here is what the applicants are actually putting a proposal against. And so I'm happy to hear that there might be more than one public input meeting. I think that is going to be really important, because even just sitting in this room here, there's so many people that don't know everything that's been going on, and there's so many bits and pieces of information, and even it's continually changing. As Karen pointed out, the information in the appraisal isn't even the current information. And so I think that might be, I'm concerned that the April 25th public meeting, it's only for 2 hours, but most of that time is just going to be catching people up to what's actually going on, and that we might not have a lot of time to actually tell you the criteria.
Yeah, so I took the, that's a great point. So we had a public community update in December. Those slides are on the Nagog Apple Orchard Committee, so you can read them. I took that PowerPoint presentation, I did a save as, and there are similar slides that can catch people up, but then there's a lot of new information about how we're going forward. So, you know, people are going to need to go to the Nagog website on the town page, and they're going to need to read the slides. They should read the RFI. They should read the land best report. You know, we can update people, but there's going to be limited time for that.
So town meeting isn't going to determine what goes into the RFP.
Right.
Okay, it's just going to be, can we put it up to sale? That's all.
Exactly. And so that's what, I know that once that is done, then you can start working and getting all the criteria.
And we've been working on that for the RFI. A lot of the same stuff is, you know, do you have the money? Do you have the experience? You know, what's your vision? And we're going to have public listening sessions. We're actually having one before the May town meeting. So that'll be ongoing. Everybody's invited. Check the website. You know, I mean, I send stuff to Vin when there's an update. He knows about it. He sent it out to his group, but the website's the best place.
And also, I would say every one of our meetings is public, and I'm sure we will be discussing the criteria. And there's no reason we can't take input from the public at these meetings as well, if we don't have time at the public meeting on the 25th.
All right, Molly Flannelly, can you state your name and your address?
I'm Molly Flannery. I'm at 3 Lakeview Drive. And I'm just wondering if in the RFP we can limit the sale to people who want to have an orchard, just sell it as an orchard.
No, it's not what you can't run an orchard.
We could legally do it, but it would be short-sighted because it would be, an orchard's a tough business. And to be honest, there's too much investment. Any smart farmer these days is going to diversify so they don't they have all their apples in one basket, so to speak.
None of the respondents were solely an orchard. Some of them had fruit trees as part of their proposal, but none of them were proposing running it as a commercial orchard.
Yeah, and if you want someone who wants to run it as an orchard, it's going to look like Carlson's. It's going to have like the beer tent and like the cider, and it's going to have the traffic and then the food trucks like you're going to get, because that's what's going to make that business profitable.
So, I mean, I think there's certain things, if there's things that people are really opposed to, say a pig farm we can put in there, but in general, it's in the town's best interest to leave this as open as possible. And we have one applicant who was going to use part of the property as an orchard, but nobody was looking to do the whole thing. And I've been in agriculture for a long time, and there are not a lot of new people going into orchards. Yes, sir, you had a question.
So, John,
I'm sorry, were you done, ma'am? Molly?
Well, I just wanted to add that Carlson's, which was spoken of as like an evil thing, but it's actually a wonderful thing.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying it's a bad place. I'm just saying that that's how they're profitable. And so if that's what you want, that's what you're going to have in your neighborhood. It's going to like there's a I don't want to use the word consequence, but like, it's going to be Carlson's
Right.
in that section
Well,
of
and I
town.
worked with Frank when he was doing the zoning, and the neighbors, a couple of the neighbors might not agree with you on that. So,
The gentleman in the back.
yes, sir.
So Jonathan Isaac, 79 Neshoba Road. So I'll put it out there. I'm against the select board making the final decision on this, just to put that out there. But then, so with an RFP, we can say, no pig farmers, right? And then we sell it to somebody who's, doing it, and we can put in there that when they buy it, the town has the right of first refusal. But if we say, no, go ahead and sell it, what's to stop them from selling it to a pig farm?
So actually, there's only two things that zoning doesn't protect in agriculture. So there's a state law 48.3 that says what the town zoning basically says, town can't prohibit anything in agriculture except for cannabis and piggeries. So we can stop them from doing a piggery. Doesn't mean we can have a goat dairy or something like that. But town zoning does have the authority over agriculture to stop piggeries and cannabis.
That's piggeries for pigs or more, legally.
No, that's not true. That's not, no.
Board of Health,
I was chair of the Board of Health and I was policy director for Mass Farm Bureau, and that was never clarified by anybody. Yes, ma'am.
Wendy Isaac, 79 Neshoba Road. I don't particularly mind the pigs, so I would be okay with that. The issue going in front of the town currently, is that an all-in? Is that what's currently written that's going to be proposed to the town, that if it's not just moving forward with the sale, it's that you're moving forward with the potential sale, if that's what we move forward with, and then the select board picks without an additional layer.
That's the way it's written now. It's written as to give the right to issue an RFP and dispose of the property.
Is there possible to amend that to move forward with a sale and then do an additional round of input at a later date?
I was gonna talk to town council about that after this very meeting.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Whether we could amend the warrant article on the floor to assuage some of the concerns about, like, having
Can
the
we
select
amend
board
it
have.
now?
No, well, it's at the
You might
printer.
be able to. I will file a complaint with the Attorney General. That allows mediation if there are 4 more complaints.
Okay,
And I think you could adapt it. No one has seen the draft warrant article on your website. There are some flaws in the way the meeting was posted in the content. I think we could modify it. And reading through the open meeting law, I think that would be allowed, or the Attorney General signing a mediator.
Could I hear from Jenny? And I also just want to hear from Karen in Ohio about where we are right now.
So, I mean, you can definitely augment the motion, you don't have to vote as printed in the warrant.
Right.
So as long as it remains within the 4 corners of the warrant, which right now is, sell the property, expand the APR, put any other restriction you want on it, historical restriction. You can definitely put more restraints on that. I don't know where it is. It's in the printer. It's been voted on by the
Monday it was at the printer.
Yeah, we've approved the warrant and it's gone to the printer it went to the printer on either Monday or Tuesday.
We being the selectmen.
Yeah, sorry, the select board. Yes, I'm sorry.
So help me understand, like, the process for augmenting it. Does that happen at town meeting? Does it happen next week? Like,
I mean, motions can be amended on the floor. That's not a great way to do it because it's, you want to put thought into it. So, what you guys might want to do, since I assume you guys are going to provide a recommendation on the warrant, on the article?
Right now, we're just listening, but it seems like we want to go forward with an amendment if we wanted to do that.
Typically there's, the planning board will recommend their articles.
Yeah, we have recommended.
You have recommended, this working group has recommended the article.
Yes.
Right. So that's the vote that you guys could arguably amend at this point. But you could make a recommendation to vote on the article as, the motion that you draft.
Right, bring in one of those pink sheets and say, here's the motion that we would like.
I would do it in advance.
Right.
As a group,
Yeah.
maybe check with town council to make sure
Of
it's not
Yeah,
flawed.
we don't want to be whispering under the bleachers.
In advance, going to come up with something now to modify what you think you need and have.
Don, don't point this. I don't really hate that.
This is a public forum. I think that would be helpful. What?
Well, from my perspective, I kind of agree, but I mean, I'm listening to Jenny, I'm listening to Karen, and I really want, Karen, why don't you say something, and then what I'm gonna do is just kind of ask for a show of hands.
So unfortunately, I got dropped or dropped myself. I'm not sure which. So I'm not sure exactly what happened over the last minute and a half.
Was in terms of amending the article as it's written, like what's the process for doing that? And I think what Jenny's saying is that we should write it, vote on it, and bring it to town meeting as an amendment, but staying within the four corners of it.
Or the proposed motion, I mean, the motions haven't even, I assume, have not been completely prepared.
No.
Motions.
They're all in the warrant. No, they're all in the warrant. They're all in the warrant.
Oh,
yeah.
So then you would amend the motion.
Yeah. And then just because I know this is confusing, and even for me, right? I've been here for 3 years now, right? So what we're asking for is from the town is permission to sell it.
Yeah.
And are we then sort of just striking out that the select board has the final right to make the decision? Like, are we leaving that?
I'm not sure what you're doing.
Well, I'm not sure we're there yet.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a potential outcome of further discussion, and I'd like to hear from some folks. I kind of feel strongly like that's what we need to do, but I could be convinced otherwise.
Yeah.
Is anybody else who hasn't spoken on the topic of who does the final say? Is there anybody who hasn't spoken on that who wants to? Okay, yes, ma'am. You spoke.
I spoke. I don't think that the town has carte blanche to decide all the things for all the reasons you said. This is a very complicated issue, and then it becomes, I don't want this, and I don't want this, and I want this little nitpicky thing, and why can't we just have an orchard? And this committee has done such an exceptional job of vetting all that you can't put it back in the hands of people that are coming on late, are not familiar with the whole topic. That's not fair. At the same time, you have a real trust issue because the people charged with caring for this land didn't. And so I think there is a happy medium, and I think it's not sitting well, and I don't want to speak for the whole town in any way, shape, or form, but I can certainly speak for my street, which abuts that property. And largely, the primary concern there is that finding that balance. And what doesn't sit well is to give kind of everything over as a one-step process. But I do think that there's a preponderance of evidence that's been shared very well by this group saying that because it is in this hole, to say go ahead and do more leasing, which is an additional cost to the town, and someone's gonna have to oversight it because no one in town is really able to do that kind of piece. It makes no sense. And to have someone come in and treat that like their home and their baby when it's not actually theirs also doesn't make sense and doesn't set that property up for any kind of success. And so I think your recommendation for sale makes a ton of sense and is something that anyone who's been paying attention to this committee's work for the past several years should be able to get behind very clearly. And I think there's a real campaign in there. What doesn't feel great is without additional input and without really talking about some of the unknown pieces, even though there is good faith in this committee, and I believe from the select board, there are unknowns there. And there has not been great faith to take care of those unknowns. There's leaning properties that we chase kids out of that we're concerned these kids are going to get hurt in that are literally leaning. So there's not a lot of great faith right now that the next decision is seamlessly going to be the best. And so I think that a stopgap measure, go ahead and find a buyer and do that, but include the town in that next process in some flavor, and then make the sale.
Okay.
So that's what I think the ideal warrant piece.
So I will say, this is by no means a one-step process. Okay, we've had many steps thus far. We're going to have many more steps, regardless of how the ultimate final vote comes out. There'll be more opportunity for this group and the select board to get that input. It's going to require folks like Mark showing up at the meetings like he does tonight, but there's going to be more opportunities for input. So there's more steps. The question is, with that input and with your ability to make your wishes known to the selectmen and us, but mainly the selectmen, because are you comfortable with that? Or would you rather have the townspeople have the final say, recognizing that there's some mild questionable legalities in doing that? Yes.
Joey Jerry from Harwood Avenue. Just to go on the record, I wish we didn't have to sell it. If we're going to sell it, I think letting town meeting vote on who the buyer is, it's not a good idea. I mean, I'm all for people having input, but what that invites is people who've not been to any of these meetings. Look how many people are here, not many. The last one I was at, I think there were 4 of us. So a lot of people aren't really all that well informed about it or aren't informed at all. Plus, we don't have a newspaper anymore. There's no way to like try and get informed about it. So I just feel like it would be opening Pandora's box. You know, every person in that room would be like, oh my God, we're gonna sell it. Like, I want it to be this and not that. And it would just be not productive. I don't know what is the right way to go about choosing who the land would be sold to, but I think town meeting would be one of the wrong ways to go about choosing who the buyer would be.
So Jen, I think you make some really good points. The question I would have for you though, is in May, we're gonna have a town meeting vote on whether basically authorizing the town to sell it. How do you think people are gonna respond to that?
I think it'll be ugly. And I think the idea of put it to them, should we sell it or should we lease it? And even, you know, make a presentation about.
No, we have
you
a
know,
brief
we tried
presentation plan.
leasing it before and it blew up because no one was qualified to like really keep an eye on it and, you know, make all those points. But I think that would be the best way to go to town meeting and take the temperature of town meeting. Do they want to lease it or do they want to sell it?
So I think I agree with you 100%, and I would hope there was some way that we could get as much input as possible on the process to getting to a sale without going back to town meeting. I guess that would be the perfect world for me, is that everybody had their say with the understanding that not everybody gets what they want, maybe including the select board, which is fine. But I do think that going back to town meeting may be opening a Pandora's box, and I'm worried that we'll have to start the process all over again.
Yeah. I don't know if Jenny or Karen can explain why we can only do lease or purchase, like we can't have a choice. I don't know if Karen or Jenny wants to address that.
In the RFP.
In the RFP?
Yes.
Well, I mean, right now you don't have authority to sell. You do have authority to lease.
Yes, but we were told that we could only pick one.
Well, I mean, you do need to compare apples to apples. It's one, you know, issue. I also, having done this, you know, a few times with you guys, I don't know that a 30-year lease is really going to get you any applicants.
It's not.
So, yeah, and to be honest, I mean, this group and by the way, everybody's had the opportunity to come in here all along and there'll be more opportunities too, but it's not like we're just starting to take public input, folks. So we've been doing this for at least 6 months and taking input. But yeah, well, this iteration of the more than 3 years, we were doing it 6 years ago, 10 years ago, actually. But so, and there'll be more, but we've been doing this. But again, all that weight of evidence, this is a group charged with making the recommendations. We took a lot of input. We looked at the realities of the situation. We did come up with a recommendation for sale. So this has kind of gone on for a bit, and my sense is we've kind of hit the point where we're maybe not as productive.
Can I just check in with Karen Morrison?
Sure.
Thanks, Amy. Yeah, so I've got several points. Sorry, settle in, folks. You know, there's a lot of places that we haven't really talked a lot about where the public is going to get additional input and where there is room for input besides the select board. The evaluation criteria are going to define who is eligible to even win, right? Who to even be considered the best bid. The evaluation criteria that we set forth in this RFP are going to be put into the RFP because of the public's input. So what we're trying to do is bake that public input into the process proactively. I don't think a veto vote as many as 7 months after we have the bids in is the right way to handle this. The evaluation committee, we haven't talked about what an evaluation committee is. The select board, Jenny, please jump in loudly and quickly if I'm wrong. The select board does not have to be the evaluation committee. The select board has the right to appoint an evaluation committee, and that can include members of the select board and members of the Orchard Working Group. What I would point out is that we have a lot of momentum right now. We have an Orchard Working Group that is working really well together, that has put together an RFI and put out the gotten back market research and made a recommendation. And the select board has supported the Orchard Working Group every step of the way so far. This is the select board that we're dealing with right now. This is the Orchard Working Group we're dealing with right now. And we've accomplished a lot. In my opinion, risking that this floor amendment or revision, however you want to put it, a requirement for a second town vote gets pushed back at us by the Inspector General as invalid is not a risk worth taking, but let's assume it was. Then we go through the RFP, we pay the town, the taxpayers, pay for the attorneys, pay for the consultant, pay for the town hall staff to go to bid. We see if anyone chooses to respond, knowing the inherent risks of investing in a bid that might be for nothing, even if they are the top candidate by all the evaluation criteria. And we've got nothing because the town has decided they don't like the top candidate for any reason, As many as 7 months pass before the next town vote in that time, right? So we've gotten all these bids back, maybe, if anybody chooses to bid. And as many as 7 months pass before the next town vote, and the town votes no, and we start this process all over again. And this committee has worked so hard and pushed so hard to move things at a faster pace and to push the select board to move. And the select board has responded, and the select board has been supportive. And we've got the public input, and we've got it on the schedule to get more public input, and we have been getting public input. There's no reason to think we're not going to keep wanting to get more of it. But if we decide to give the town a veto over the top candidate based on the public's evaluation criteria, we will have brought this process to a screeching halt. And I do not think it is in the best interest of the town for us to keep footing the bill, to have an orchard continue to deteriorate, and to risk, and it's not a huge risk, I'll admit it, but it is a risk. The longer we go without this orchard in work, in active agriculture, the more risk we have that the town is completely taken out of the equation, and that the state puts in their own farmer, whoever they want. So I understand, that folks want that mass veto right at town meeting. I don't think it's the right forum for that level of input. That's why we're here, is to be in the weeds. It's why the Orchard Working Group meets every 2 weeks. It's why the Select Board meets every 2 weeks. We have the momentum to keep moving and to get somebody in here quickly. I don't think it is in the best interest of the town or the taxpayers to risk bringing that all for nothing.
So Karen, I understand what you're saying, and I agree with a lot of it, or at least I understand it and agree with you. The concerns are valid. The select board will have veto power as well. And
yes,
they vetoed recommendations before with input. And yes, it was a different select board, but they all assured me that they were above board too. So, and I think
Brett,
you're looking at it wrong.
Let's talk about
I think you're
who
looking
we've
at it
got right now.
incorrectly in stating
Who
we're
do we
giving the
have
town
right
veto
now,
power.
Brad?
I'm looking at the town giving it approval power. And I think those are very different things. You're assuming it's going to be a veto. I'm not. Yes, they have the opportunity to veto.
I'm not
but I think
assuming
we need
it.
Karen, I was quiet while you spoke. I'd appreciate the same consideration.
I've been quiet most of this meeting while you got to speak after every person, Brad. So no, we're gonna engage in a dialogue here.
Okay, so what I was saying is essentially, I think they've given the town approval power. So I agree with a lot of you say I have a different perspective on some of it. That's all.
What about the timeline?
Wait, Karen's still speaking, please. Wait, just 1 second. I'll give you a chance.
Democracy, and the town needs a vote.
Please let.
Then you're gonna be given an opportunity to speak. Karen, go ahead.
So, okay, so what, approval power would be fantastic. If the town votes yes, that would be phenomenal. But we have to reckon with ugly truths, and the Orchard Working Group has done a really good job of doing that so far. Right? You know, if we want to continue to assume best case scenario, we would still be looking for somebody to lease this property. We have to reckon with the risks. We have to hold ourselves accountable to our mission, which is to get somebody into the orchard as efficiently and as fairly and with as much public input as possible. We have the mechanisms to get public input. We have demonstrated our good faith efforts to get public input in the past. We have it on the schedule already for the future with more to come. But, to say, well, maybe they'll vote yes, I don't think is a responsible choice. And I would, in terms of public input, the select board, all respect to the Orchard Working Group, you guys know how much I appreciate everything you've done. None of you were elected. The select board has been elected by the town to get into the weeds, pardon the pun, on issues like this, right? That's why we're here. It's because we meet every 2 weeks and we can keep grinding away at what the town instructs us to do. And if the town instructs us to sell and the Orchard Working Group says, this is what this is the RFP, these are the criteria that we've set forth, this select board, the one we have right now and might not have in 2 years, has demonstrated that they will listen.
Okay, Joanne and then Vin.
Joanne, Jerry, so I've been thinking since I last spoke about how to decide who the entity is that will either buy or lease this land. And I really think, and I think Karen's trying to make the same point, letting town meeting make that decision would be a big mistake. And actually, I may someday eat my words, but there is no entity in town that knows more about the history of this orchard and all the ins and outs of the process of picking someone for this orchard than the Orchard Working Group. So Karen made the point, the Orchard Working Group are not elected, but they know more about it than anyone else in town. So maybe, with tons of public input, which they are soliciting, it should be Orchard Working Group that makes that decision. If people don't like the fact that they are not elected, it could be a joint decision of the Orchard Working Group and the Board of Selectmen. But I think to let town meeting to go and collect all these bids and ideas from the different prospective farmers and then go to town meeting and let town meeting pick, it would be irresponsible. It's not fair to these farmers who are putting so much into these bids. And it would just trash the whole process, in my view. There'd be too many people there who aren't informed, and not because they're bad. It's just hard to get informed. It's hard to get to these meetings. It's hard to know where to go, or it's hard to make sense of it all.
Jenny, is it possible that the working group committee and the Board of Selectmen can have a joint meeting where we all vote in public?
I think that would be a good idea. I don't.
Is that legally possible?
No, unfortunately, the select board is the only board that can sell this property. It's in the care, custody, management, and control of the select board. This working group has no statutory authority to sell town property. The select board can, and I think likely will, ask the working group for their recommendation and to do, I assume, a lot of the heavy lifting here.
Yeah.
And they're gonna act on that.
So what
That's
can
my
we do
understanding.
if the town decides they don't like the select board's, decision? Can we get together and veto their decision?
No, you can't.
You can vote us out.
Vote us out.
You remember that on election day is the only thing you can do.
What?
You can't undo the select board's decision.
So one thing you can do is go to Board of Selectmen meetings, it's always on
Yeah.
the agenda.
Yep.
And say what you want to say, it will be
Yeah.
on TV.
And also, it's frustrating to hear, you're constantly saying like how you don't trust the select board. You're assuming that we're acting in bad faith, and you have no evidence that this board is going to be acting in bad faith, because we have not been acting in
What
bad faith.
I have not said you've acted in bad faith. I said I don't trust you because I've been burned by select
Okay,
boards
but-
multiple times over the last
So
15 years.
that's not this board, and you continue to say, you are saying, you're essentially, you're making people scared that we're gonna act in bad faith. because
So
we're-
exactly. Like
No, it's not.
maximize,
It's the town.
maximize your
And you guys shouldn't
opportunities
take this so
now.
personally, but it's not just.
So okay, we've got Karen speaking. Go ahead, Karen.
So thank you. Just maximize this opportunity. If we've had several folks here say, I don't think you're acting in bad faith. I think everyone here is doing the best they can. I think everyone here has been working hard on this. Okay, frankly, it's time to show us that you're not just saying that. This is the select board that's been elected. This is a select board that has supported this process, that voted, right? The Orchard Working Group made this recommendation and the select board said, okay. I am flummoxed at the idea that you have a select board you can work with, and you're saying, but at one point I didn't, so I'm not going to work with you now. I'm not going to maximize this opportunity to make things happen the way that we want them to because of something that, because of past. It doesn't make any sense. But if we are going to talk about the past, let's talk about how we got through 12 Robinson
It was
Road.
many. And what I'm not saying is that I don't trust you, but I've been burned, excuse me.
It's not the current situation, and it's unprofessional to keep bringing that up.
Okay, but let me finish because I do have a point to make. Mike,
I'm disappointed.
I'm fine with you being disappointed, man. So it's not they don't trust you personally. I've seen it too many times with select boards, all of whom told me that they were above board and taking input, who frankly didn't. It's not you guys personally. And I've seen it happen too many times. And my bigger concern is by not leaving it up there, and this is where I'm gonna ask for a vote next, or a show of hands, is that we're gonna get into the Maytown meeting and people aren't gonna be comfortable, we're not gonna get proposal to sale. I put an email to you and Karen. So Ben, you have one statement. I'm gonna ask for a show of hands on what people would like.
So, I appreciate Karen's, opinion. I don't, and I apologize for the outburst. However, in my mind, this issue is too important to leave to the select board. I'm okay with you folks going through the vetting process and recommending a candidate, but I truly believe that the town needs to have the ability to say yes or no to that candidate. Doing anything else, it feels wrong. Like we the people should be able to say, yes, we want. I'm not advocating that we get to pick and choose who, but I do think that at the November town meeting, we should be able to say, I agree or I disagree. And
That's picking and choosing, Vin.
Oh,
10
it's
people
not picking and
online.
choosing.
There's
That's
10
what it
people
is.
Online.
It's democracy.
You're gonna
It's
bring
like
this
yes
to
or no.
the
So I think it's more of an approval.
No
I would
one
describe
is
it,
going
but
to-
regardless. Okay, made your point. Can I ask, I think we do need to move this. It's deteriorating a little bit. Can
So,
I just
Mr.
get a show
Chair?
of hands?
Sorry,
Yes, I
Mr. Chair, it's just that there's a lot of folks online, I think, that we maybe have overlooked. Can we
Okay,
double
so I
check
haven't
if
seen
there's
any
folks
hands up, but
online?
if anybody would like to speak,
Yes.
wave, do something.
10 people online right now. You're gonna bring
Right,
this to the spring meeting and nobody's gonna vote for it.
I'm sorry, what's your
There-
name
this-
and where do you live?
This is Justin Britton, 90 Nashoba Road. There's 10 people online. There's 20 people in the room, maybe. You're gonna bring this to the spring meeting. There's gonna be 1,500 people, in there, and everyone's gonna be pissed. And the meeting's gonna go on for 4 hours. like, what do you think's gonna happen?
Okay.
Rose Sullivan, Nagog Hill. I think the working group has done a phenomenal job. We live right next to the orchard, and our land is being impacted by the neglect, frankly. I think we need to, as Karen says, go forward now with our opinions. The abutters, the people on Sarah Doublet, up and down Nagog Hill, we're the ones who are going to be most affected by whatever happens. And I think you're all listening to us, and we have to trust that our opinions will be brought forward to the selectmen, and to bring in the whole town, who, for the most part, has not been involved in this process like the rest of us have been, I think would be a huge mistake at this point. As Karen has said, we're making progress. You're listening to us, and I think we should go with what we have.
I do want to say, and I hear that, I hear everybody, but everyone in town gets a vote. It's, you know, and I know the people who live around the orchard are deeply impacted, but everyone's a taxpayer. Everyone gets a say. Like, we can't say like the people who live there are more important than, like, I live around the corner. Like, my opinion's less because I live around the corner. Jen's in a butter, but she's not like on the street. Is her voice and her vote less? Like, we can't do that. Like, we have to weigh the people who live right around there. We understand that. I get it. But everyone else in town also has a say, and they also have an opinion. And we can't just basically just like, more heavily weight this group than other people in town. Like, they wouldn't appreciate that.
It's an asset owned by the whole town, and I understand the neighbors potentially impacted, and we're considering that. And Amy made mention about, a hard cider establishment and that sort of thing. So we're sensitive to neighbors, but it really is a town asset. Does anybody else online have anything else to say? And I don't see any hands up. I don't know how.
All right, let's move on to the next
Okay, so can I just ask for a show of hands quickly? Right now, we have a warrant article that basically goes out to allow the town to sell it, and it leaves the final decision with the selectmen. I'll try to do this online after. I apologize, but with the people in the room, how many people would like to leave the warrant article as it is? Please raise your hand.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Joanne, raise it higher. I think you're.
Can you say that again?
So we have a warrant article. We have a warrant article that right now allows the town basically to sell it, which that's a given. I think that's where we're moving, and it leaves a final decision with the select board. If you're comfortable with that, please raise your hand.
And you give them the recommendation.
Yes.
Yeah.
You recommend.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the public input as well, I guess.
And
I
public
think-
input.
Yeah, I mean, that's a given, right?
I'm not raising my hand either way because I want to listen, not
Okay.
participate.
All right, can you guys keep your hands raised?
Keep your hands up.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13.
And there looks like there are 3
And
online.
then online,
So there's at least,
2, oh, and then
Are you asking?
3, yeah.
3.
so I'm not voting either way, just so you know.
What did
So-
I just say? What number?
13 plus 3, 16.
16. Okay, and this isn't scientific because we have this is exactly an unbiased group of people who decided to show up here tonight, so I think we need to keep that in mind as well. So all the people who would like to see it changed to go to town meeting or some other alternative, please raise your hand.
Of course, we've never seen the warrant article,
But you've heard me describe it, and
but maybe the first
Can
thing.
someone give this to them?
give this
Allow
to
the
Don.
selectmen to sell it subject to town, you know?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13.
And people online, they're online, so.
That's 2 on
13.
Oh, there's 14. Molly's
Okay,
waiting.
and this is not a scientific survey, it's just a general gut check, guys, all right? What's up?
Almost even.
It's
It's almost even.
Yes.
So, given this, what I said, I feel pretty strongly, as you know, about this, but I'm not here to push my views. It's pretty even. I'm willing to go forward with this, with the town meeting article the way it is. My biggest concern really is that it's not going to pass. But I would encourage people, even if you're concerned about the process, to still vote for it because we need to move forward. We're going to leave another session. But if anybody else wants to make a motion,
Could we attempt to draft what we would like to see before we get to town meeting?
Yes, I would
That
like.
would make sense.
I would like to try to see if there's some other language we can use.
Yes.
That will give more assurances to people that their input will be taken.
I think we missed it.
Taken into consideration before any decision is made.
That's much like
And
the
I'm
planning board
happy to make it
process.
as binding as we can make it. I don't know how binding we can make it, but some kind of memorandum of understanding or whatever we do, like.
No, you make it
Okay.
worthwhile, you educate the people, you get the backing before you go to town meeting.
Okay,
That's public input, that's the way it's supposed to work.
that's what I'm saying.
and we were planning that anyway, no.
But we can
Well,
try.
But if you want that incorporated into
We
the
can
warrant
try to
article,
formalize it. in
So
some
that's
way.
right, we should do something sooner, let people speak to it. I think we could come to consensus that would work.
But not tonight.
yes, ma'am.
I just have a quick, Mary Fraser, Barry Bush Road. Is there a way to get all this information, like this mass email or phone call or something to get everyone on, more aware of what's happening?
We have a website that has a lot of
It's hard to
information.
even find it.
Yeah, please tell us.
What about a Facebook
I mean, I
group?
don't know, like, with it, like,
No,
is
I'm
it
not
crazy to
updated.
say a phone call that says, go to this site to gain this information?
People need to go, so you go to the Littleton,
Yeah.
the Town of Littleton website. At the top, it says committees. You scroll down, it's alphabetized. You go to, find the Nagog Orchard Working Group, you click on it, and there's tons of links to like the documents, like the land rest report, the RFI, the USDA maps, like minutes, all these recordings, like everything is there. People just need to invest the time in educating themselves. And there was an email blast that went out that told everybody about the meeting that we're having on the 25th. Like, people just need to put out the energy and the time.
Or
Like,
just Google Nagog Hill Orchard Working Group, it'll take you right to the
We've
page.
been
Should we-
struggling with. Go ahead, Karen.
Oh, I was just gonna suggest that we go ahead and put the article up on our website as
Yeah,
well.
we can do that. Yeah.
The email went out from who to who?
the town sent an email blast to inform everyone.
I didn't get it.
If you haven't signed up for the town email blast, that's why you didn't get it. If you've
You have
signed
to
up,
sign up on the town.
if you have signed up for the town email blast,
Uh-huh.
you will have received it.
To town email, what?
So the town has a
There's-
list.
Does anyone know about that?
It's right on the front page. when you
So
go to
if you
town
go to
website.
if you go to the town website, you can sign up for notifications, and one of them is general interest, and there are a bunch of other things that you can sign up for. You can sign up for individual board agendas. But if you sign up for the general one, we asked the IT department to send out an email, and everybody on that list got an email saying, on the 25th, there's gonna be a public information session about the orchard, and that email went out today. We've also put it on LCTV. I know most of you don't watch it, but we've tried every way we know how to reach people. Again, this is a problem we're struggling with a great deal, and there's no good solution.
And the town does a lot. It's hard to get it all in one place. It's easy to get.
And Brad, who doesn't have to, he emails Vin all the
Yeah.
time, and Vin is managing an email list, like
One of the emails instructed people on how to register for the town emails, so.
Thank you.
Turtles all the way down.
I'm gonna send it out again.
Okay, very quickly, ma'am.
Diane Penna, I live at 44 Nagog Hill Road. Is there any way to utilize some of the communications through the schools? I don't know if that would be possible.
No, the school I was a part of an organization, we tried to like put messages out through the school, and they are very locked down about stuff, like it's school related, it's about plays, it's about soccer.
For the same reason, they've got a ton of information going out.
Yeah.
They don't
I
wanna do
just,
it, so.
it increases the likelihood of things being a total cluster at town meetings and so on, if people don't know about things until it's too late, or it's the very last minute, or what, and they come uninformed.
I mean, it's nice to, that's why it's great to have this many people here. Go tell
Yep.
everybody that you know that cares about it to come and engage with us, because we desperately want to hear what people have to say.
Pass it out.
Yeah,
Mailbox,
Yeah.
flyers in mailboxes, I mean, it might.
Anyway, we're not the only board that struggles with how to get this information out to the town people. I think we're doing our best, but for the folks here,
So-
please get on the webpage and send it, everybody send it to 5 friends.
I do have some
Yes,
good
ma'am.
news on that front, if I could.
Oh,
Yes?
Karen.
The
Go
good
ahead, Karen.
news is that starting in June, the town is going to start publishing a newsletter that will be able to help publicize things, you know, even much more than they are right now. So
Is it go out? Is
better
it
things
paper? Is
ahead.
that-
It's electronic to start.
It'll be an electronic newsletter. Yep.
Yes, ma'am.
I just have.
Your name,
Name
please.
and address.
Holly Bayless, Pine Road. Can you please just clarify? So it's not going to town meeting to say, do you want to sell or do you want to lease?
That's
We're going-
correct.
Correct.
Do we have the permission to sell?
Yes.
It's just going to-
That's correct.
That's what'll be on the May
We are
town meeting.
asking for permission to sell.
You're
Yeah,
not mentioning leasing.
no.
And it's required for us to do the RFP and to put it out.
Right.
And
It has
that's the
other
first
information
step.
up there about if we want to add restrictions to it and that sort of thing, but the gist of it is, it's approval to dispose of surplus property, I think is what the technical legal state term is.
All right, it's already 8:45 and we're still on. number
So
10.
I think we have, where do we go next? I think we're gonna close down public comment now. We've had a lot. Where do we go next? Do you want to try to drop something for the next
Yes,
meeting?
I do.
Okay,
Yep. And I'm gonna talk to Jenny as
okay.
soon as possible to try to and discuss with this group what we can do what we can do to come back with, to town meeting on the floor with a changed motion that's still inside the 4 corners, but addresses as many of the concerns we've heard tonight as possible.
Okay.
Do we have?
I don't
to
think we
meet-
need a motion for that. You kind of volunteered to do that. I'm good with that.
Do we have to meet
something
next?
next meeting for people to look at?
I'll try.
Sorry, the committee needs to speak. Do we need to meet next week or are we gonna go with our regular schedule?
When's our presentation?
The 20, our presentation's the 25th, our next scheduled meeting is the 24th.
I think we're okay with the 24th. I mean,
Next
I'm
week is
really
spring
hoping that
break.
the meeting on the 25th is focused largely on elements of the RFP and what they want on there. And
Can
not
we,
on
sorry,
the-
we need it quiet so we can just talk, because it's also recording, so, sorry, go ahead.
So I think we can do it on the day before. I'm hoping that the 25th, this can be an element of this, but I don't want it to take up as much time as it did tonight.
So perhaps if necessary, we could have a Zoom meeting next week, some evening, if we had something that we had to discuss, like an amendment to the warrant.
Sure.
Yeah, that would be
Karen,
helpful.
do you have something to say?
I just can't be there is all. I'm out of pocket next week.
Next
for
week or
spring
the
break.
24th, Karen?
Isn't that the same thing?
No, 24th is in 2 weeks.
Okay, yeah, 24th I'm good. Next week is spring break and I'll be on travel and unreachable.
Okay, let's play it by ear, Matthew. Let's see how you get along with making that. You've got other things. Let us know if you think if we should be
Okay,
doing it earlier.
sounds good.
Okay?
Are we gonna address the cleanup of the upper barn? Are we?
Quickly, we're gonna go through the rest of the agenda. So, 425 community meeting is, what else? What do we have? Anything we need on that?
Yeah, so I have made the updates on the slide based on the feedback that I got from you guys, but I wanted to wait for this meeting to see if I was gonna add more slides or change more slides. So I'll sit down and work on that a little bit more, for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
We do need to put a meeting notice up for that. Town meeting presentation, do
So
you want
I
to
will-
discuss that at all? Or
yeah.
you want to put that off until next week?
We can put it off. I was gonna work on it
Okay,
and I can bring it to the 24th.
Why don't we
because
do
Still
that?
have time prior to the meeting, to the May meeting.
all right. Clean out of the upper barn, do we want to do anything on that?
That's really Sarah.
I know Sarah's working with the town administrator.
She's
Okay.
gotten like a permission slips.
Yep, and she's also working with the Historical Society as well.
So that's moving forward nicely.
Yeah, that's moving forward.
By the
Okay.
upper barn, are you talking about the big barn or?
The big barn.
Yeah.
There's still a bunch of trash in it. We're trying to get rid of.
Yeah,
Across the street from the house.
I just want to bring up something quickly on other
Sure.
business. So one of the comments that someone made in here is that kids are running through the collapsing structures. And so I know, like, I'm so sorry, Matt and Karen, like, we have talked about getting those structures like repointed and holding up so they don't collapse. Like, we really need to do that so they don't collapse on kids. Like, I didn't know kids were running through it, but like, we've talked about it for so long.
We actually just lost one in the last storm. I don't know if you noticed that.
Yeah.
All the
yeah,
walls are down.
Sarah sent a picture.
Which one?
The upper one, the one closest to the road.
So I think what would make sense is if there's somebody like Sarah has been running point on working with town hall or the town administrator to get access to the upper barn. If there's someone who can run point on what repairs they think are necessary, but I kind of thought that that's what we did when we put together a budget.
We have been doing that.
And our budget was, but I guess I think there was some sort of disconnect because the budget request didn't include repointing. I don't recall, did it?
Well, it included general repairs and
Small
it was
repairs.
agreed that we
repairs.
would just transfer them out of the reserve fund. So someone just needs to follow up on that.
But there were those small buildings that were in the
Yeah.
pick your own area that were pretty rough shape. Sarah, I thought, was working on getting them fixed. I thought they should be
think
turned
I was
down.
supposed to do that
Okay.
and I just
You
haven't
get a lot
done
done.
it. So
Okay.
And this isn't like repairing it and fixing, making beautiful. It's just kind of like
Bracing
making
it.
sure it doesn't fall down. It's very minimal.
Could we put some sort of like, I call it crime scene tape around it as
That's
well?
not gonna kick kids out, kids who.
I think that might be an attraction.
It's kind of a
Yeah,
caution,
it's
stay
attractive.
out of it.
I think it's an attractive nuisance at that point. Though, in general, people should keep their kids off the property overall, but I understand that's hard with
Yeah.
teenagers. I have it myself.
I think
So-
we need to talk to
There's not much
Steve.
salvageable in that barn, so why don't they just put it on the ground and save the footprint for a reconstruction?
which barn, the stands, the pick your own
The shed
stands.
up, not the
The
pick
shed
your own,
that's
not the pick your own at the road, but the shed that's further down into the orchard.
Yeah, I think they had to tear it down, but Sarah was gonna talk about fixing it. I didn't think it was worth saving.
They're really nice lumber. It's really nice
Okay.
lumber.
Well, the lumber may be good, but the building was, the whole wall falling
It is.
over.
It's
You mean
very
Maybe
good.
maybe we need to knock it
Yeah.
over.
Just collapse it in place and
Yeah.
you have the footprint.
I mean, we can resell the lumber. No, I'm serious, like we did with that garage door, right? Over
Yeah.
by town hall.
Or you could donate it to Recycled Center at Devon's for builders.
Well, Sarah's been, are you lead on that or is Sarah? Matthew?
I probably am. I'll do those. I have a lot to do on this one, but I'll try to get that.
I do, but I don't know anybody. I don't know
Yeah,
how to have the
that's fine.
contacts in
I
town.
can talk to town administrator. Okay, so I'm doing that and I'm also doing Jenny and I'm also doing the presentation.
And you can use my slides from the community meeting, like, don't
Sure.
need to reinvent the wheel.
Yes.
Do you want me to take on the presentation? or you
No,
want me to play it?
I'm kind of interested in doing that one, actually.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine.
I mean, at least first draft of it.
No, that's fine. I'm just going to take some of your plate if you need it.
I think I can do it.
All right. Do we have a motion
Nope.
to, no?
Well, I have other business.
Oh, you do?
Yeah. So question is, can we, when the property does finally sell, can we earmark that money to some sort of dedicated fund for the town to keep for maybe purchase of other land in the future?
I think that's a question for FinCom. I don't know that, I don't see any reason why not, but I think that FinCom would have to answer that because there may be rules about whether it goes into free cash and can be reallocated some other way.
Oh.
If the money came in from self-help or CPC funds, maybe there's some restrictions on it when we buy, I don't know.
So how do we go
And the
about?
process, do we need to go to town meeting for that as well? Do we make that part of one of the warrant articles?
If it went into CPC, it would get matching, right?
Yeah, so we should sit down and talk to FinCom about it.
Yeah.
That's what,
So I wonder if we should just, like you can get in touch with Steve Venuti,
Okay,
the chair, and say, hey, can we talk about this at your next meeting? It'll probably be after town meeting because they're pretty busy, but that's probably the best way to go about it.
so I would suggest one consideration we don't need to vote on today is any proceeds of that sale, if we can, be retained for purchase of other agricultural land in town.
right.
I think that's a great idea.
Okay.
On that point.
Joanne
Deary,
Deary.
Harvard Avenue.
What's your name, address? You got-
Joanne Deary, Harvard Avenue. Like, if you're right now trying to sell agricultural land because you can't manage it properly, why would the town buy more agricultural land? Or maybe buying some kind of open space with it?
Well, two things. I mean, we own a fair amount of agricultural land that's in hay, which is much easier to manage. And it doesn't mean we can't sell it buy it, protect it, and then sell it again. It happens all the time. A lot of land trusts do that.
Like if it's not an APR already, you could purchase it and put
Put
an
an
APR.
APR and then sell.
61A, the town has right of first refusal on, and if that comes up as an option, the town can be an intermediary to get it passed on to somebody else.
Sandra Santoro's had it for a long time. Yeah.
Sandra, do you have your hand up from before? Would you like to speak? Sorry.
Hi, no problem. Yeah, I just had a question. I was wondering for the land vest report, if there were any plans to have it revised based on the historical protections placed on the house and the upper barn being added to the APR.
I don't think the timing's gonna work out.
I think the report included them both being raised in single-family homes. I believe that's what I read. So I just wanted to ask.
No. So the land vest report, and right now, nothing else has been added. We're just exploring it, so it hasn't happened yet. So the land vest report looks at the orchard as APR and the house and the barn is unrestricted. Now, if we add the restriction, I mean, frankly, we'll be lucky if we get to do it before the person purchases it, and we may have to make it a condition of sale. So if, I don't think it makes sense to redo that until at this point. Karen, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, Jenny jumped in here, but I thought there was a requirement
Jenny
that
left,
we
sorry.
get another appraisal. Oh, well, I think there is a requirement that before we go to sale, after we get authorization to sell, we have to get another appraisal.
Okay, well, we can do that. If we have to do that, I don't see a lot of, I don't think we're actually gonna be asking the appraisal price or expecting it, but if we have to, we have to. It'll be a pretty simple update, I suspect.
Will it cost us another like $9,500 and
Not that much.
$10,000?
No.
It'll cost something, but
Yeah, it'll
It is
cost
what
something
it
to bring
is.
them back and reappraise it, but it won't be $9,500.
yeah, Matthew, wasn't that brought up at a SB meeting or maybe our joint meeting with FinCom that we were gonna have to get another appraisal?
I don't
I thought
recall that. It could have been, but I don't recall it.
Yeah, I
If
swear
there's
it
a
came
legal
up.
requirement, we'll do it. I don't see a
Yeah,
practical
right.
requirement.
Yeah, agreed.
Thanks for clarifying.
Thank you.
Any other business? Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second. Aye. At 8:56 PM.
We made it.
Oh, and Karen has to say aye. Karen, say aye.
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 I know we're supposed to do roll call, but I don't think anybody
just
disapproves of this.
We just did.
Thank you, team. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks everyone.